Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
Question for you.
Okay.
What would you do if I sang out of tune?
Well, I would probably get up and walk out on you.
Fair enough. Now, what would you do if that out of tune song was on an album full of otherwise great music?
I'd just put a scratch mark right through that thing.
Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. My name is Jim, and I own a record store.
And I am Steve, and I own a record collection.
Both of which are fun.
Yes, they are.
And I have a record collection, too. So lots of stuff to talk about today, and we're going to expound upon the notion of whether one song can make or break an entire album. And I think we've got some changing attitudes on this with the advent of streaming versus the way it used to be. We'll get to all that in just a couple of minutes. Plus, there's a couple of interesting news items I wanted to touch upon. Vinyl news, of course.
Which you hear first.
Which you'll hear, well, first-ish,
Yeah.
if you only listen to us.
Yes.
You'll hear it first. And if you only listen to us, well, we thank you, but man, think about your life.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a vinyl community podcast. So what kind of pickups did you have this week, good sir?
Well, last week I mentioned I went to a record show, and so I picked up the Descendants and original Milo Goes to College.
Oh, yeah.
And and there was two of them there. I mean, what's the chance of that?
Really?
I'd never seen it. And there's two at the show, and I got just an incredible deal on it. I had a repress, so this is perfect. I was so delighted. Also, Spaceman 3, it was called Transport Radiation, or Transparent Radiation. Had never seen that one. There it was, Spaceman 3. For those that don't know, it's very kind of shoegaze, but not. It's spacey, stonery, druggy. I mean, these guys were very much, hey, you listen to this as you take drugs.
They've been around since the mid to late 80s, too.
Yeah, they were actually, about mid-80s, and, then they kind of broke up and went different ways. I did pick up the new Steven Wilson album, the Harmony Codex.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people have been talking about it. Some have said best album of the year, and someone had sent me a Steven Wilson album I really liked. This is okay. For me, it's a lot more proggy. And, I'm not I am not the prog guy, but it was still good. It's just one I'm going to have to listen to a little bit more. And we'll see if I can get into it.
Well, Wilson's got his fingers in all of these remixes that he's been doing for these prog bands,
Yes.
King Crimson, Jethro Tull. So it's really kind of a given that he's going to go that way a little bit with his stylings.
Yeah, it is. It makes sense. And the final one from it, I bought two because of this. Well, one came in from Vinyl Reprise. It's Ray Barretto, and his album's Acid from '63. And it's jazz, but on there is the song Deeper Shade of Soul. Yes. And so I'm listening and I go, wait a second. Urban Dance Squad. So I went out and bought Urban Dance Squad's greatest hits. I bought it for one song.
There you go.
And I play, and it was just fun to hear. Here's the original version and how much they took on their version of Deeper Shade of Soul and put on there. And so, yeah, I played them both.
Playing off that idea from a previous episode of cover tunes and moving into today's episode of getting a song or an album for one song.
Exactly. See, we're moving in. But Jim, what about you?
Well, for me, it's been a light week. I mean, very light, as in I've only got one that I added into the collection, and I think we've even talked about it before, and one that I'm considering, but I'm going to give it a couple of more listens. The first being, I think I mentioned to you that group of South Korean bootlegs that we got in the store. Lots of interesting and fun labels, misspellings on them. Lost in translation is what I'm calling them. But I kept the copy of Metal, Pink Floyd's Metal, off of that because the label calls the group Pink Ployd with a P, and the typo on One of These Days calls it the song One of These Eyes. But being a South Korean bootleg from an unknown year, the sound quality is just horrible. The cover is flimsy and photocopied, but it's just too fun of an addition to not keep, so I am. I'm going to keep that in there. I actually had to add that into Discogs too because that version didn't exist.
Really?
So I proudly put that under the artist Pink Floyd with a P. So it redirects, so don't worry.
As music collectors, we all like to find albums that sound terrible quality. The artwork's awful, and it's all screwed up. I mean, that is what we live for as collectors.
Well, I'm there.
Oh, my God.
So the other one is, and this is an iffy, I'm going to give this a couple more listens. I pulled it off the shelf here at the store just to play in store, and it's from the Barclay James Harvest. And the album is Everyone is Everybody Else from 1974. Very Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Youngish, but with a UK feel to it. Especially since Barclay James Harvest is that English prog rock band from the 70s. So, but it's got this lighter, almost folksy feeling, but you can almost hear that British prog inside of it.
Huh.
So it's interesting, and there's a couple times if you didn't know, you would say, what CNS Young song is that?
Really?
So it's not Barclay James Harvest. So I'll let you know down the line. I'm going to give that a few more listens and come up with an idea. Before we get to the topic at hand today, though, there's a couple of interesting things I wanted to bring up with you, get your opinion on, and talk to some folks about as well. And as always, we're very curious to hear from you guys on this. If you want to leave a comment or send us notes, the YouTube channel is the easiest one to leave comments on. We see those more readily. And you can put comments, I think, on the Podbean. I'm not so sure about Spotify. I think that can be done, but I don't know enough about Spotify to tell you the honest truth. But first being, there is a release coming out this week. As we're recording this, it's the 15th of October. So the October 20th release dates coming up, we have been looking forward to a Rolling Stones release called Hackney Diamonds. We've talked about this previously. It's their first new original material in many, many years. And so I was going through looking at our orders to place on this, and then lo and behold, on our distributor site, I see multiple variations of the Rolling Stones Hackney Diamonds for Major League Baseball teams. And I'm like, what in the world is this? So I had to call that up on the distributor site. No information whatsoever other than, hey, here's a bunch of variations that you can order for your store if you want. So I ended up having to go and find a news article on this. And this came from Dre's Bay. I'm not unfamiliar with it. I think it's a SB Nation, looks like a station on the West Coast. And the article talks about how the Rolling Stones are going to release MLB, Major League Baseball, for those of you not in our neck of the woods, themed, and right off the bat, this article gets me because they MLB themed vinyls for the new record.
Vinyls, okay.
For the new record, Hackney Diamonds. And okay, so what they've done is they have pressed a white vinyl version. There's been a clear vinyl version that has been advertised for indie exclusives for stores like ours, and a regular black vinyl version. There may be some other big box variants out there that I don't know about as well, but this one is a white vinyl version with a variant cover, different from the regular commercial release cover. And you can look these up, and I'll show these to Steve here, but essentially it's just a white cover with a Rolling Stones tongue logo centered in on it. And then that logo the tongue has been replaced with like baseball stitching. And each of the tops of the tongue logo has the letters for the respective MLB Major League Baseball team. So Tampa Bay is TB, Detroit Tigers, DET, NYY for New York Yankees. And this is just, to me, a wild concept because A, I didn't realize that the Rolling Stones and Major League Baseball were so connected like this article says. But B, this is really just a cheap way to put a massive amount of variants out there. It's white vinyl, so all they have to do is reprint a different looking cover for each of these teams. And that makes a total of 30 different cover variants for this Rolling Stones record through the Major League Baseball.
You remember the excitement of In Through the Outdoor from Led Zeppelin? There was like 7 variants, and people were trying to get every one of them. Well, now, kiddies, this is really exciting. I mean, I think they went baseball because Taylor Swift already got the NFL.
Got football.
Yeah, she took football away from them. So, well, what's now? All right, let's do baseball.
And, we're coming down to the end of the Major League season also. Exactly. So it's like, well... Now, my other big problem with this is, well, A, if you're going to collect all 30 variants and make that 32 if you get the indie exclusive and the black vinyl version. But if you're getting all 30 of the Major League Baseball cover variants of this, you're looking at $38 a piece on that. That's a chunk of change.
Yeah.
Now obviously they're not going for somebody who's going to buy all 30. There's probably a couple of people that will, but they're going for regional. The folks here in Michigan are going to want the Detroit Tigers. Chicago, they're going to want the Cubs or the White Sox. New York, they're going to want the Yankees, or what's that other team? There too. But you get the idea. They're really kind of playing to these different regions with team pride.
And, I guess the question is, how many would they print? How many would you know to go on each one? I mean, the Oakland A's, are they still in Oakland?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But it's like, oh, what the heck? Who wants that one?
To answer your question on
Yes.
how many they're going to print on this, A, I don't know. But B, the story that I'd read said that this was going to be available exclusively at the Rolling Stones website. So the fact that it showed up on our distributor tells me, and this is just my opinion, that they weren't selling on the website. So they had to open this up to the mid-level distributors to say, we've got to do something because these things are dead in the water on rollingstones.com. So all of a sudden it's like, hey, Jim in mid-Michigan, you want to order some of these?
That's right. It's a special deal. Come in, only $38. So.
But it's absolutely insane, I think, that they would attempt to try to push this many. Not to mention the logistics of, granted, it's just the cover print. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they have to repress a different vinyl version for each of these.
Yeah.
White vinyl all the way across. It's smart on that end. But still, the logistics of trying to get 30 different variants done and meet the demand on a single day, I don't think it's going to happen.
No, that's it. Rolling Stones have always been pretty good at marketing, shall we say. Marketing, not as good as Kiss, when you can make a coffin and get people to buy a coffin.
Or air guitar strings.
Yes, or air guitar strings. That's good. But Rolling Stones have always done a phenomenal job. This one seems to be, especially with the new album, which, people really get into it. It's to go that far out, that seems crazy, but maybe they'll be the last ones laughing. Who knows?
Well, and it's not like they're hurting for money, so if they sell a ton of them, great. If they don't,
Yep.
Now, the other question is, will this be a collectability item down the line? If somebody pops up on Discogs and says, I've got all 30 MLB variants and I want $10,000 for them.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, then. We'll see where it goes and attempt to follow up with you folks if we hear more, if I hear a little bit more on this down the line.
Well, I hope soccer gets a chance, wrestling. That's a
Wrestling does on Record Store Days.
Yeah, that's true. Now comedy does with Pauly Shore.
Now, the other item I wanted to bring up, and this is also having to do with an October 20th release, in going through our distributor, I came across some reissues that we do our weekly release show on our YouTube channel, where I talk about the upcoming stuff and give our customers a chance to pre-order because it helps us. But then I found, well, these are some very, very cool late 80s, 90s alternative reissues that are popping up, and even some later ones. And then all of a sudden I looked, and the price point, the manufacturer's suggested retail price, was through the roof, to the point where I was like, this is not right. And then in looking at it a little deeper, most of these are all imports from the UK. And now I'm going to talk to my distributor next week and see if I can figure out what's up with that. If you're importing something, obviously you've got some extra fees added to that, but I'd like to think that major labels can handle that because they're coming from Universal and Warner. You'd think that they could get their stuff from the UK over to the US without a ton of extra fees added. So this to me just smacks of a price increase for the heck of it, to see what we can get away with.
And it's just not a little price increase.
No, it's not.
This is insanity.
Let me run down a few of these. Now, the first one is not an import. It's a U2 reissue of Zooropa. Looks like that's coming from Ireland, so that's domestic, but they're asking $60 for it. Double LP, maybe there's a couple of extra goodies. But here's where the oddness starts. Now, these are color vinyl variants as well as cover print variants.
Yeah.
Lana Del Rey, there's two of them due, and these both come from Universal Import. They're both double LP, so that automatically increases. But for a double LP, we're used to paying maybe around $35, $40. Lust for Life and Lana Del Rey's Ultraviolence, each on a different colored vinyl with that different cover, both of them listing at $74.99.
Both of those albums I would be interested in. Well, Lana Del Rey, I mean, she does all kinds of variants. I mean, she did one where she just shows her boobs on there. Yeah. And we're going to charge you more for that one because it's pornography. So there you go. But for $75, that's not worth it to me.
You've got to be a hardcore fan to really want to dig into it. Here's a few of the others that I'd come across that are also imports. Universal UK, so this is UMG as well. Rapture from Susie and the Banshees, $77.99. Wow. Garbage, version 2 on blue color vinyl, double LP. This is from BMG International, $60.99.
And these aren't like high fidelity or anything special.
No, as far as I can tell.
Normal. Yeah,
they're not UHQRs, they're not MoFi, they're not even music on vinyl. So here's another one, Hole. Live Through This. Now that, you can say what you want about Courtney Love. That's an album that's got a couple of important and popular songs on it. Universal, it's another UMG, $50.99 for a single LP on pink vinyl. Stone Temple Pilots, Purple, that they just reissued on clear vinyl domestically from Warner UK for $54.99. The Cranberries, everybody else is doing it, so why can't we? Single LP, $50.99, and that's coming from Universal as well.
And that's the perfect title because they saw everyone else doing it. So, I think this is why we should release this. I mean, let's join this insanity. $50 for a single album. Yeah. This is, to me, what can destroy a hobby because you're taking so many people out of trying to get this cool new music. It making it, just taking out of the price range.
They're pricing people out of it. I saved the best two for last,
or
maybe
great.
The worst two. You familiar with you remember the artist James?
Yeah.
He had a bigger hit, college radio hit with the song Laid, the album Laid. Well, they're reissuing that. And at first I thought, well, this is cool. I haven't seen this on vinyl before.
Yeah.
Coming from Universal UK, James and the album Laid, single LP on limited edition, transparent red colored vinyl, originally released in '93, produced by Brian Eno, and the list price suggested is $77.99 for a single LP.
Wow.
And then James' other album, Gold Mother, same thing, $77.99.
How bad do you really need a James album to go 77? I had both CDs, and I played them once, maybe twice, and then they were shelved for the rest of eternity. But
well, they had one song that you wanted.
Yes, they did. They had one song that we wanted, so we bought it.
Well, curious to know what you think, and I've heard from a couple of folks on comments on our YouTube channel, one from, I think, New Zealand, saying that they have embargoes on some U.S. stuff that way. So maybe there's something bigger going on. Another one from the U.K. Saying that their stuff, most of these releases sound like they came from a record day that they had similar to Record Store Day.
Okay.
So these are coming over. Maybe the stuff that Warner and Universal could not sell in Europe, so they're shipping them here, and they're trying to make up a loss. I don't know, but this is just ridiculous.
Well, we couldn't sell them, so let's bring them to the U.S. Let's jump those prices up, though, because now we'll make them sound like they're really collectible,
Yes,
and
sir.
you have to have this.
Curious to know what you think. It's a way. I'm not even going to bother ordering any of those simply because I don't think that they would sell in our store. But who in their right mind would pay $78 for a single LP for one song?
Yeah.
Maybe in this day and age.
With it not being a MoFi, a UHQR, or
Nope.
something like that.
It's-
Vinyl Me Please comes out a lot more, less expensive, or music on vinyl.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll see what happens there. We're working our way toward the subject at hand of can one song make or break an entire album, or would you buy a record for one song? But before that, one more thing, and this is a follow-up to a previous discussion we had about cover tunes that we didn't know were cover tunes, part of that discussion. And we had an album from Falco come in, not the one with Rock Me Amadeus, but a different one. And there was a song in there called Der Kommissar. Now, Falco is Austrian, correct? Yeah, he's Austrian. So this was sung in German, And it was Der Kommissar that was made famous by the group After the Fire from their 1982 album, Der Kommissar. And I didn't realize that the After the Fire version was a cover. Falco did this originally, and in German, with the rest of the album in German, it sounded much better. And although I don't know German, you could still kind of sing along with Der Kommissar.
Yeah.
And this got us talking too. After the Fire, I'd always thought that song stuck out like a sore thumb on that album. It was a good song that After the Fire did, and they had a bigger hit with it, obviously, because we didn't know Falco did it originally.
Yeah.
But it just stuck out on that album. I at one time owned that album, and I think you did too,
Yep.
because of that song.
I bought it because of that song. I played it, loved that song, and the rest of the album, it was not even close to that. It was so different. It just stunk. I didn't like it. I took it. I wouldn't even file it with my records. I put it to where I'm going to try to bring it into my local record store to get some kind of credit for it.
And trade it out. So this gets us finally, we're getting to the subject at hand, and that is, can one song make or break an entire album? And I think historically, you and I have talked about this a lot before, that there have been certain albums in the pre-streaming era and maybe even pre-CD era where there has been one song that I wanted. You had to buy the whole album to get that one song, so you did. And that was just it. I liked the song, I'll buy the album. Not necessarily the case anymore.
Now it is easier, for me. I just go into Apple, to my Apple account, and I'll download that one song into my phone if I really need it. And I've done that so much more. But before that, I would be buying all these albums for that one song and then just kind of scratch my head. You'd pull it back out, you'd play that one song, put it back in, and not bother playing anymore.
Now, there are exceptions to that rule. Times that I've bought an album for a song and end up liking that album. The rest of the album, okay, this isn't too bad. I'm digging it. I really get a kick out of this. It's a lot easier to think for us sometimes in the negative, though, to say, well, this song was so good, the rest of the album's not that good. Then you make the decision, do I want to keep the entire album based on that? After the Fire, same thing. I got rid of that.
Yeah. I plan to get rid of that one.
For now that we talked about it, it'll never sell.
Yes, exactly. But there are a lot, when I think back to the 70s. The 60s was a prime time for that one hit, then they'd have to come up with something else. And that continued into the 70s. When I think of just groups like Paper Lace, The Night Chicago Died, Brandy from Looking Glass, they did that. Blue Image, Ride Captain Ride.
Yep, Blues Image. Yep.
Yes. Five-man electrical band, Signs. These were all these really big hits. You could buy them on a 45, but the albums were cheap, and I was just buying these albums up. But I was finding that the rest of the music wasn't really what I wanted.
Yep. But you'd still play it, but you wouldn't go to that album often because of that.
Yeah. Exactly. And so when I restarted up my collection, I didn't go out and buy the whole album from Carl Douglas for Kung Fu Fighting. I instead downloaded Kung Fu Fighting or Jigsaw's Sky High. I had them all before, but you know what? I just needed this one song.
And I think that also illustrates the fundamental difference in different artists and how they handle their content, whether it be we're making this song, we hit lightning in a bottle with this song. Now we got to come up with 6 or 7 other ones to bookend around this album to be able to sell it, versus other artists who, we're talking Pink Floyd's and King Crimson, Yes as well, whether they be concept albums or not, just these albums that needed to be listened to in its entirety. It wasn't just about a song, it was about a whole album being the listening experience.
And when you hear groups talk about some of their albums and some of the hits, and they'll say, "Well, we didn't make that song to be a hit. It took off, and that's what people wanted," or it was a B-side on the 45. And I think those albums tend to be a lot stronger than when we know this is the hit. Now let's get some filler put on here, and go. But there was Martin Briley. He did this, that song, "The Salt in My Tears."
Yep.
I like that whole album. Now I bought it for just that song because I love that song. Great video. But after I bought it, I go, okay, I really like this album. I mean, the rest of it was really good. So it does happen.
But for every time that does happen, at least for me, there's multiple other times I'm like, well, the rest of this just isn't where it is. And I think we mentioned too when we were talking about cover tunes, the original version of Superman that was made famous by REM was done by a group, The Click. Based on that one song, I went out onto Discogs. I found a copy of the album from The Click that had that song on it, and I love that song. But the rest of the album turned into, it wasn't so much that psychedelic rock feel of Superman. It was kind of pablum or bubblegum pop. And, after listening to it a couple times, I thought, you know what? I already have this on my phone. I don't need the whole album. So that one went away.
A genre I always think about when you think about this one song, disco.
Yeah.
They would, you'd come up that you'd have that disco hit, and so they'd make all those albums, and then the rest of it was either a remix done 3 or 4 different times, or just, you had the one hit, but then the rest became real filler. There were a few cases, Donna Summer would make some stuff, but she still had a lot of filler. They just, of course, you could take that song and go into, 12, 15 minutes of it. That was the beauty of disco.
The dance mix.
Yes, the dance mix. Just keep spreading it out. We'll get a full side off this thing. But generally speaking, a lot of disco albums, you have that one hit, and then it just goes to pot.
Are you talking about YMCA here?
Yes, that would be. Well, now we'll see.
Macho Man.
Yeah, Macho Man had at least 2 hits on that one, so I'm going to give them that. Once they hit YMCA, maybe not. Then In the Navy. Oh, boy.
So I've got a list of albums that I still have in my collection, but have a song on them that keep me from regularly going to that album to listen to.
Yeah.
I like the album. I can maybe tune it out. And in one case, it's on the second side, last cut. So I just stop it before this.
Yeah.
This one that I'm talking about here is by 10 Years After, and it's the album Watt, W-A-T-T. Great psychedelic blues rock. Alvin Lee and Company, their early stuff. Love that album, love that music. And then they get to the very last cut on side 2, and it's a version of Sweet Little 16, Chuck Berry's.
Okay.
And they still give it a little bit of that bluesy rock flair, but it's nowhere near as dark and brooding as the rest of the album because, well, it's singing about, well, what is now a touchy subject, but a 16-year-old. But in this case, it does not fit with the rest of that 10 Years After album, much like After the Fire. And I will oftentimes, when I'm listening to that album, I'll get to that last cut and I'll pick the needle up before it starts because I don't need to listen to it. It's going to end in 3 minutes anyway, whatever.
Yeah. When I think of that, I can go to about any 80s hard rock band that decided to come up with their power ballad.
Yes.
They would throw that one power ballad in that would generally become a hit for them, but I detested them.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anything to do with it. Man, I'm rocking out, and then we just go mellow.
Are you talking about Beth from Kiss?
Yeah, that's a great example of it. Yes, and everybody, a Cheap Trick came up with The Flame.
Yeah.
It's like, huh, really? Now everyone loved it, and dance floor favorite, The
Slow
Flame.
dances.
Yeah, slow dance
in the 80s.
Exactly.
Those were important.
Yes, I guess I didn't do enough slow dancing.
Now I've got a couple of others. I want your opinion on this.
Yeah.
Off of the Police album Synchronicity, the song Mother.
Well, it doesn't ring a bell to me. I'll have to listen.
It's just basically, I think it's maybe Andy Summers just kind of screeching. Is that my mother on the phone?
Okay.
I'll play that for that one. Sticks out horribly for me. Now, this one I think we talked about when we talked about perfect albums. I put this down as an honorable mention, and that is the song Money from Pink Floyd on Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
And yes, I love that album. It's not my favorite Floyd album, but it does, to me, detract a little bit from the overall feeling. Now, and I think we mentioned this before on the perfect album discussion, the fact that Money starts off a side helps cushion that blow where you go from the heartbeat, you flip the record, and then you go into the bass line drumming on Money. So, okay, I'm good there. That's why it's an honorable mention. That's not something that's going to dissuade me from playing Dark Side. Not enough. Another Floyd one for me, and earlier we talked about metal. I do like that early Floyd metal. There's a song called Seamus on there, which is basically just 2 to 3 minutes of some guitar riffing with a dog howling in the background.
Yeah.
David Gilmour was dog sitting for someone, and they just brought the dog into the studio and made it whine and bark for a few minutes. And coming off of Metal, which has so much other great music on there from Fearless and Echoes, just to end it on the note of a dog going, just always stuck wrong with me.
It's like I can't think of the title of which album that was. There's an early Pink Floyd album that had about pigs sitting around.
Yes, that one was on the album Umaguma, and it holds the distinction of, I think, being one of the longest Pink Floyd song titles. Several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict.
That's it. Oh my God. Yeah, I like Umaguma. I really enjoyed it. I just had picked up a copy of it. But that song drives me nuts. It's just, what the heck? This is why we don't do drugs.
And that could be that could be it, or them just saying, well, you know what? Let's just have some fun with this.
Yep.
The note I read on Seamus was they're trying to be funny, comedic at the tail end of a very serious record.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I get it, but come on. Maybe not. Another one here for you, Joan Jett. Mm-hmm. And off of the album, I know where you stand with Joan Jett, but on the album I Love Rock and Roll, which was released in December, it was a December release, she put a cover of Little Drummer Boy backing up the end of the album.
Absolutely. I showed that on one of my shows, and I was talking about, I really like this album. I remember buying it. I said, but what's up with Little Drummer Boy? I mean, that is just, it just doesn't go right. Yeah, it's in December, but I mean, it just ruins that album.
Now, after the holiday season, I think they finally figured that out, and subsequent repressings of that song was replaced. They pulled Little Drummer Boy off, and they put "Oh Woe Is Me" on most of those pressings. But then, when we get into the later repressings into the 2000s, it was added back on as extra content. But yeah, just a Christmas song on a non-Christmas album never seemed to fit. Put it on a Christmas themed and let it roll and go with that. Okay, now I'm going to say a very controversial one. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. This could get us in trouble, or me at least. From the album Abbey Road and the Beatles, Octopus's Garden.
Okay. Oh, so many people love that song.
I know, but to me, it does. This is just me. Now, side 2 of Abbey Road is also, I think it's a little experimental with their longer medley of songs that go into there. But on the other side, at least, it's like, okay, Ringo, go ahead. You go ahead and write something, and we'll let you sing on this one. That's what it's always felt like to me, and I don't mean to besmirch Ringo in any way, shape, or form, but on an otherwise serious album, yes, they're trying to be lighthearted. I get it, but it just didn't seem to fit for me.
Got to give him some writing credits, so here you go. Yes, and he had like a song on every album.
He did, and they gave him that one just to kind of keep him happy. And after watching that documentary, most of the time Ringo just kind of sat there nodding, so let him do something, please. But for me, again, feel free to take me to task on that. And then I've got one more, and this is a more contemporary and newer one, and this may make some people upset also, but Samantha Fish is a great blues guitarist, contemporary blues guitarist. She's come out with some great stuff, but her albums seem to have kind of a different theme to them. One is more country blues. Another one is kind of a jazz lounge blues. Then there's real good slide guitar blues a la Stevie Ray Vaughan. For her fairly recent album, not her most recent, but fairly recent one, the album was called Faster. She had a new producer, and they tried to take her in a more Taylor Swiftian direction to give that more of a pop sound. So it was still slide guitar blues, but had some pop infused into it. There was a song called Loud on there, which was good kind of poppy blues. And then right in the middle, she has an artist by the name of Tech Nine break into a rap. Yeah. Now, I'm not a big fan of rap. I don't, people can like what they want. I just don't personally. And for me, having this pop in, I was having a difficult enough time dealing with this poppy blues coming from Samantha Fish to all of a sudden have this, rap kind of come out of nowhere. Just turned me right off.
That would be, she is not the person to do that whatsoever. Yeah, the one that I just, and I've told you this many times, it was that live album from the Sex Pistols, and Sid Vicious does My Way. I love the Sex Pistols. I enjoy that live album. But when Sid Vicious does My Way, I go suicidal, and I just have to calm myself down. I can't stand it.
See, I don't love it, but it's also a tongue-in-cheek one for me.
Yeah.
I'll laugh at it when it plays through just to hear him go, "On each and every highway," in the Sid Vicious drone.
Yeah, it just ruins that album for me. I won't even rebuy it. It's just like, no, I can't have that in my collection. Oh.
Now, there's even a Record Store Day Black Friday title that's upcoming. I think you're wavering on, right?
It is. King Missile. You know, they have that song, that hit, that popular hit that was so big on the radio, Detachable Penis. And it is funny, it is humorous, but the rest of the album, I don't know.
It's tough to listen to. I've got that other King Missile album, you borrowed it.
Yeah.
And it's an acquired taste.
It is. King, very much so. The way he kind of talks and sings, and there's humor to what they do. They have a lot of humor, but you have to really be into it at that time, I think.
But most definitely that early excitement about seeing King Missile being on the Record Store Day list, and I can finally get a vinyl copy of Detachable Penis, is kind of ebbed.
It has, and that's the problem with streaming. You go in, you listen to the rest of it, and you go, maybe I should just download that song.
Well, that's the benefit of streaming as well, but so it's helping you determine.
Yeah, exactly. And what else I need to go into. So, yeah, I use that more often than I used to now on some of this.
You can always put that song as your ringtone too, right?
Yes, exactly. Perfect for any meeting for it to come up.
I woke up this morning. Never mind, folks.
All right, so let's take this in a different directions. What if there's a song that will keep you from buying a record album?
Something that's so despicable that you say, I won't listen to the rest of it?
Yes.
Like what?
Let's just start with the starships we built this city.
Yeah, okay, yes.
That album could be fantastic. I don't know, because I won't do it, because I cannot handle that song.
It was just beat to death on Top 40 radio when it came out.
Oh, my gosh. Starland Vocal Band, Afternoon Delight. Some people have told me, they've come on and says, that album's really, really good. I don't know, because I can't do it, because that one song's on there.
You can't get past it.
No, I just can't. I detest that song. How about Don Johnson's Heartbeat or David Soul, Don't Give Up on Us, Baby? Maybe their albums are great, but those two songs just stink so bad to me.
All of these things have that Top 40 radio element in common, I think.
Yes.
They're pounded into our heads. Again, prior to streaming, it was either listening to our records or cassettes, ultimately CDs, or the radio.
Yeah.
And the radio controlled what we did. I worked Top 40 radio for a while, and to this day, I do have an aversion to a song like We Built This City, because that was the era. But then there's Peter Cetera, The Glory of Love was another one that just drove me insane.
Yeah. I didn't buy that album. I liked Peter Cetera in Chicago. Then he got so wimpy. Yeah. I thought I just seen a cool documentary about that. He wouldn't even get on and really talk. But that album, just forget it. I'm not going to do it.
I have to backtrack a little bit because I want to give props to Rush on this, because there was a Rush song, I won't believe this or not, that really turned me off of an album, but I have come around after seeing it performed live. And I'm talking about the song Roll the Bones from the album Roll the Bones. They had decided at this point they were going to kind of interject a rap in the middle, much like we talked about with Samantha Fish, but they couldn't find a way to make it work. I guess in reading on this, Rush tried getting a couple of different artists. They tried to have a female come in and do a rap, but it just never quite fit into that. And so what they did was they took Alex Lifeson and they slowed him down. Or no, I think it was Geddy Lee. I'm sorry. They read Geddy Lee and slowed his vocals down to make it sound like somebody else and put that rap in the center. And that caused a huge controversy. Yeah. I remember when that came out, Rush fans were like, why, oh, why are you putting a rap break in the middle of a Rush song? It just doesn't fit. But in retrospect now, it does fit into their era, for me at least, speaking as a Rush fan. And having seen that performed live where they had different stars kind of lip-syncing that rap and the video behind them, softened that for me. So I've come around on that one at least.
Well, I'm interested to see how some of these albums, especially the ones with the song I don't like, you can say Bay City Rollers, Saturday Night, eventually they're going to come out for $75 for a single album. You know that's just going to happen. Here's Starship. We're bringing that back. It was so popular in the 80s. That's $80, please.
We can look for the box set with the alternate takes of We Built This City.
Yes. We'll give you a
demo
couple,
version.
We can give you a couple stickers on that too, just for fun, and a DVD of the video in case you haven't had enough of it.
Well, DVDs are going bye-bye, so we don't have to worry about that. They'll just beam it directly into our heads.
It'll be VHS instead.
Yeah,
We'll give you a VHS
the
tape.
collectible.
Yes.
So if we missed anything, Steve, is there, I mean, again, artists create what they create because they have this desire to get this music out. And yes, I'm sure that there are some times they say, well, we just need to come up with something. Mm-hmm. Let's get a dog whining for 5 minutes or 2 minutes and put it on the record just to fill up that other spot. Whether they're being serious or whether they're just being smart asses saying, this will show them we're not this stuffed up, super serious Pink Floyd. Listen to the dog.
Yeah.
They create what they want to create, and we consume what we want to consume, and it's up to us at that point.
As collectors now, we do have all these other options with the streaming, with iTunes, with whatever we want to get that hit. Now, there are still, tons, thousands and thousands of collectors that do want to have these, 70s hits. And I used to be one of them. I would buy that album just for that hit and have it to say I have it. It's just, it would stay there for eternity, and I would pull a compilation to play that song, honestly. But, it's still, people find it exciting, and that's great. That's how they're collecting. But if that's not your deal, you can go a whole other route.
So much easier to hit that skip button on your stream than it is to reach in and pick the needle up on song 3 on side 2.
Yes, it is. Or try to make a scratch mark that goes right through it.
All right, folks. As always, very curious to hear what you think about this. Are there any albums that are ruined for you by one song? Or are there albums that you would get and you hold on to specifically because of one song? Let us know.
Yes, please. And I'm Steve. I'm a record collector.
I'm Jim, and I am a record store owner. Take us to task, would you? You've been listening to two guys talking about records, a vinyl community podcast. As always, thank you so much for being here, and we will talk to you folks next week.
Have a good one.